Hospitals have been the setting for countless ghost stories, but maybe these aren't just stories. If I were a patient at this hospital, I'd be asking to leave. That is some exorcist behavior, and I'm just not here for it. Doctors and staff apparently reported the woman hadn't been under the influence of any substances. Was she just messed around? Was she in a certain mental state? It's hard to say. There's not a lot of info on this one, but clearly something is going on. A haunted chair, always creepy, especially in a hospital. Reddit user Stalker the Zone posted this video writing, "This was about a year ago. I do security at a hospital. The chair was on the other side of the hallway on my first patrol, and on my second patrol, this is what I had found. This is really the only time I've ever experienced anything spooky like this. Never really was a believer until this happened." End of post. What you're seeing here is footage of the Waverly Hills Sanatorium, said to be one of the most haunted former hospitals in the world. The most notoriously haunted spot? The Waverly Hills Body Chute, aka the Death Tunnel. Waverly Hills Sanatorium is a former tuberculosis hospital in Louisville, Kentucky. A tunnel was used to transport patients who were dying from tuberculosis without being seen by others. They would be taken out of the hospital through this long, dark passage, which stretched about 500 feet long. The idea was to keep the grim reality of death from affecting the morale of the other patients and staff. Because of this, many people believe that the tunnel still houses the spirits of those who were transported there. I mean, if anything's going to be haunted, it's an old abandoned tunnel that countless dead bodies were rolled through, right? Visitors have reported feeling this strange energy in the tunnel. Some have claimed to hear voices, footsteps, and even cries echoing through the darkness. The tunnel has become a popular spot for ghost tours. It was featured in an episode of Ghost Hunters, and yeah, definitely a place I'd like to check out. What is this person doing? Standing there and filming. Turn around and walk back down the hallway, sir, or ma'am, whoever you are. First thing this reminded me of is that hospital scene from Jacob's Ladder. If you know the movie, you know what scene I'm talking about, and it's not something you ever need to see in real life. I don't know what's going on here. I don't know what the person needs. I don't know if this person needs help. All I know is I'd be getting someone else to do it. Not that I should be handling anyone's medical problems, seeing as I'm not a doctor. Anyway, so many questions about this video. Why is this person on a gurney at the end of a dark hallway alone? Why are they moving like that? Where is this? If anyone has any more info on this clip, let us know down in the comments. This creepy photo is taken by a nurse using a surveillance camera. In the image, you can see a dark, crouched figure standing on a patient's bed. It's hard to make out what the thing is, but many have said it kind of resembles your classic cloven foot demon creature. The nurse noticed the shadowy figure moving up and down the patient's body, and just a few hours after the figure was spotted, the patient sadly passed away. This kind of sighting is not totally unique. There have been claims of demon-like figures appearing in hospitals before. Some people believe that hospitals are places where these dark entities lurk, waiting for someone to die so they can drag their souls away. One night, a few nurses decided to explore a floor of their hospital that is supposedly haunted. Patients and staff would report all sorts of strange things going on there, so some nurses figured, what the heck, it's a quiet night, why don't we go up and peek around, and this is what happened. It happens pretty fast, but the curtain does start to move on its own. The nurse was just understandably too freaked out to stand there and keep filming. Then a pen flies off the desk, seemingly on its own, with no accompanying gust of wind or anything like that. And after that, they book it back down the hallway in a panic. This video was getting shared a lot online when it came out, and it's easy to see why. It's not even so much about the supposed paranormal stuff. It's their reactions. They seem pretty genuine. Like always though. What do you all think? If there's one type of place you'd expect to find the Grim Reaper lurking, it is a hospital. In this video taken in October of 2022, a paramedic is filming outside of a hospital as a patient is being brought in. Now unfortunately, this patient died just a couple hours after this video was taken, but nothing about the video itself seems out of the ordinary. The paramedic didn't think so either until he went back and watched the footage later. Take a look at this. A shadowy figure can be seen standing in the hallway that the patient was just rolled out of. Knowing that the patient died right after this, it's hard not to imagine this could be some sort of dark entity, an omen of death. A lot of late night security guards claim to have some pretty eerie experiences, but in hospitals, I mean, it must just be a whole other story. Not a job you'd want to do if you're a believer in the paranormal. In this video, a security guard at a hospital in Argentina was alone at the front desk late at night. We watch as the automatic doors open, only there's no one there. The guard obviously notices the doors open. He gets up to check it out. Now, watching the video, your first thought is, why does he get up and walk over? Clearly there's nobody there. It gets even weirder when he starts talking to thin air. Well, according to the guard, he wasn't talking to thin air. He even allows this invisible presence into the hospital. Now, after the incident, the guard claimed he saw a woman who told him she'd left something in her room, so he took her name down and let her in. But he was chilled to the bone when the staff showed him this footage, especially when they told him that the name he'd written down was a woman who had passed away just the day before, in the exact room she said she'd been staying in. Up next, we have the ghost nurse. Now, based on the dialogue behind the camera, it looks like these two were patients and were running around one night in the dark after having spotted some sort of entity. They're clearly in a panic right from the get-go, and right at the start of the video, we see what looks like a nurse peering out of the window. The pair decide to continue creeping around in the dark in search of the ghostly nurse, remarking on how the place seems to be empty. And then, this happens. Alright, gotta admit, it's hard not to laugh at this dude's scream. Now, for as loud as this man's scream is though, he's brave enough to give a war cry and then run to the hallway to try and catch a glimpse of whatever this thing is again, but when he turns the corner, all we see is a dark, abandoned hospital hallway. A brave man indeed, a loud man, but a brave man. Not sure how good he'd be to have around on your ghost hunting team. He'd probably go deaf by the end of the night, and he'd probably scare all the ghosts off, but at least he'd be willing to run up on a ghost like he were about to skewer it with a musket. Wherever this place is, by the way, it's creepy. No doubt there's a ghost or two lurking somewhere in those hallways. Waterfront Station in Vancouver, Canada is said to be one of the most haunted places in the city, and after reading about it, I can certainly see why. This subway station is busy even when there aren't any living people roaming around in it. Guards especially will see all kinds of weird stuff at the station, especially late at night. Phantom footsteps are reported, the ghost of a 1920s flapper, the ghost of a railway worker named Hub Clark, who died in an accident outside the station when he was decapitated by an oncoming train. His headless ghost is said to wander the tunnels at night with a lantern. Then there's the ghost of the old woman. So a guard was on break one night, fixing up some food in the kitchen when he nearly fainted. Lurking in the corner was this old woman, and at first he thought a passenger just snuck onto the staff area and given him a fright, but then she moved closer. More specifically, she floated closer. The guard booked it out of the kitchen, but the ghostly old woman tormented him in his dreams that night, and the following night, and the one after. He was so freaked out by the experience that he even saw the old hag in reflections and mirrors. He started feeling this need to paint her, thinking maybe this would release her from his mind if he just put her down on canvas. So he did, and he left her portrait in the old kitchen. After that, no more nightmares, and it's said that every time the painting is moved, the person moving it has terrible nightmares of the old woman, forcing them to return the piece back to its original spot.
Next up, we have Bank subway station located in London. The station, which is an intersection of 4 different subway lines and was previously used as a wartime bomb shelter, sits directly next to the Bank of England, which just so happens to have been built directly on top of a graveyard. So really, it's no surprise that the area is haunted. And I mean, if you're a ghoulish ghost, it really just makes sense to take up residency in the dark London underground underground, sitting directly next to a desecrated graveyard. The most common apparition seen in the tunnels of Bank Station is commonly referred to as the Black Nun. She roams the tunnels cloaked in billowing black robes and disappears into thin air anytime visitors of the tunnel attempt to make direct eye contact with her. Maintenance and security staff at the station have shared many stories of having seen not only the Black Nun, but also other apparitions appearing in the tunnels beneath the city, which has led to a number of them requesting to be transferred to service other stations, and honestly, I don't blame them. It sounds pretty creepy, especially, you know, at night in the dark tunnels if you're working security. I know they do a lot of maintenance work at night so they don't disrupt the lines in the day. It's a no from me.
We head back to the London Underground again with Elephant and Castle. The London Underground opened in 1863, so it's the oldest metro system in the world. Lots of history. Spoiler alert, there are a lot of London subway or tube stations on this list. Elephant and Castle is no exception, said to be haunted by an entity known as the girl on the train. Drivers have reported pulling into the station and watching this young woman walk onto the train, but this woman never gets off. At least they never see her leave. Drivers will also hear odd tapping sounds around the station, sounds that stop as soon as they reach the next station, and people working or passing through Elephant and Castle late at night will often report hearing footsteps behind them, even when the platform is completely empty.
Next up, we've got the Stockholm subway system, home to the Silver Pillen Arrow, a shiny ghost train that travels through the underground tunnels of Stockholm, stopping at random stations at random times. Reports from people who have seen the train vary, with some claiming the ghostly vessel to have been completely empty when it came to a halt in front of them, and others claiming that when the ghost train's doors opened, they did so to reveal subway cars full of ghost passengers. It is believed, but has never been confirmed as far as we know, I suppose, that any living person to step foot into the Silver Pillen will be immediately taken to Kimlinge, the subway station of the dead, which is a real but abandoned station in Stockholm. And when they arrive at this station, they will become stuck forever.
Another spooky London Underground station is Bethnal Green, and it's easy to see why. The station has a very tragic backstory. Because of how deep the station is, it was the ideal place to be if bombs were being dropped overhead, and during World War II, London was under constant threat of air raids. On March 3rd of 1943, a retaliatory air raid by the Germans was to be expected after the Royal Air Force attacked on the 1st and 2nd. So residents were being ushered underground, but an accident happened. Someone tripped and fell towards the bottom of the stairs. This led to others falling down, and things quickly escalated into a full-on mass panic. Part of the problem was it was nighttime and the staircase was blacked out, so people could barely see, and on top of that you had the threat of an air raid, so it was easy for things to get out of hand. 173 people died, having been trampled, and about 60 others had to be hospitalized. So it's said that till this day, especially on the night of March 3rd, you can hear the ghostly sounds of panic slowly rising in intensity until it becomes almost unbearable.
Next up, we've got Lower Bay subway station, located in Toronto, Canada. I actually visited Lower Bay last year for a Rick and Morty installation, which is what I do with my Saturdays. Those of you from Toronto likely already know that Bay Station is an active subway station located pretty much in the heart of downtown Toronto. What those of you who are and aren't from Toronto might not know is that beneath Bay Station lies an abandoned subway station known simply as Lower Bay. Lower Bay Station was a bit of an experiment that lasted 6 months in the year 1966. It was designed to make the subway system run smoother, but it had the opposite effect, and so it was shut down. Today, the station is used to train new operators to move trains between the two subway lines currently in use, for platform surface experiments, and for film and television. Oh, and it's also the home of the Lady in Red. Finally, not a lady in white. Awesome. A female ghost dressed in all red, believed to have either been pushed or to have jumped in front of a train at the station during its short time in operation. Those who have had the opportunity to visit the forgotten station have reported feeling random cold pockets of air, feeling an eerie sensation, and even seeing the woman roaming along the tracks in despair. Personally, I was too excited to be getting the chance to see a life-size sculpture of Rick and Morty, so I wasn't too concerned about the ghosts.
Shanghai also has a haunted metro station, Xiaobo Road. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Its nickname, though, the Ghost Station. Now, for one, this station can be a bit of a nuisance. Apparently, trains break down here a lot. Workers will say that they often can't find anything wrong with the train, and train doors will also malfunction here. But if you're not dealing with the annoyance of a delay or finicky doors, you have a ghost to worry about, a violent one. One story goes that a man fell from the platform as the train was pulling in, but witnesses claimed it didn't look like he'd intentionally jumped or accidentally fallen. It looked like he'd been pulled by some unseen thing. And at night, when the station is closed, workers will occasionally hear what sounds like a woman maniacally laughing in a dark corner of the platform, but there's never anyone there when they walk over to check.
Next up, we have Gates Avenue Station in New York. On the morning of February 14th of 2005, a young man by the name of Rashawn Brazel set out to meet his mother for lunch. He was never seen alive again. 3 days after he went missing, his torso, legs, and an arm were found in the tunnels of the station, wrapped in trash bags. And sometime after, his other arm was located at a recycling plant close by. It is clear that he was killed, but what is not clear is who did it and why. Almost 10 years later, and the case remains unsolved. While police are unsure of whether or not Rashawn was killed inside of the tunnel or if his body was simply brought there after the fact, the haunting scene staged by the killer at Gates Avenue Station in the winter of 2005 caused much discomfort and sorrow amongst the community. To add insult to injury, after Rashawn Brazel's death, many people connected to Rashawn began receiving cryptic messages from someone claiming to be his killer. Even still, the case remains unsolved.
Next up, we have a section of the London metro system that's so haunted, the train operators are scared to go through it. It's called the Kennington Loop. The Kennington Loop, part of the Northern Line, is a spot where the train loops around. People aren't allowed to hop on or off at this section, and some train operators hate the Kennington Loop, not just because it's got a tight bend, but also because of some eerie happenings. The story goes that back in the 50s, a guy tried to jump between the cars at Kennington, but ended up being run over by the train. And even when the trains emptied out, drivers have claimed to hear voices and doors clattering like there's someone on board. One night, the train operator heard doors banging down the length of the train, getting closer and closer, so he finally decided to go and check it out, but found nearly half the doors flung wide open and nobody there.
And finally, to finish off our list today, we have Farringdon Station located in London. Farringdon opened in 1863 as part of the Metropolitan Railway, the world's first underground railway line. And each year, over 25 million passengers utilize its services. But here's the thing. Prior to the construction of the Underground Railway, a young woman by the name of Anne Naylor was carelessly laid to rest on the grounds. Anne Naylor was an apprentice in the hat-making trade, and one night her boss became very angry with her and took her life in a fit of rage. He then dumped her body on the grounds of what is now Farringdon Station, as you may have guessed by context clues. Many people who have visited the station with the intention of connecting with the paranormal have reported hearing soul-crushing screams and pleading whispers coming from seemingly nowhere. Overnight security staff have also reported sudden and unexplainable drops in temperature, generally after dark and in the areas where the screams are most often heard. Flickering lights and CCTV cameras going haywire are also a common occurrence at the station, which is said to be one of the most haunted underground subway stations, that's a mouthful, in the world.
Sitting on top of a hill in the quiet forested town of Cornwall, Connecticut, lies the now abandoned Dudley Town. It was originally settled in 1747 by the Dudley family and is now part of the privately owned Dark Entry Forest. There are tons of rumors and urban legends surrounding the place, mostly that it's cursed. The story goes that the Dudleys brought a curse over from England that doomed the village to fail. It had started off like any typical settlement of its time, with folks building homes, farming the land, and mining for iron, but by the late 19th century, the village was completely abandoned, with the last resident, John Patrick Brophy, leaving in the early 1900s. Tales of a curse that drives people insane have been told around campfires for generations, and according to some, the demons that tormented the original settlers are very real and still linger in Dark Entry Forest to this day. So what exactly is this so-called Dudley Town curse? Well, supposedly the Dudley family's troubles began long before they ever set foot in America. Back in 16th century England, Edmund Dudley, an ancestor of the Dudleys who would later settle in Dudley Town, Connecticut, met a grim fate. Edmund was beheaded in 1510 after being accused of treason against King Henry VIII. This marked the beginning of a curse on the Dudley family. His son John Dudley didn't fare much better. John attempted to place his own daughter-in-law, Lady Jane Grey, on the throne of England, but his plan failed miserably. Lady Jane, along with John and his son Guilford, were all executed. Fast forward a couple centuries, and Gideon, Abiel, and Barzillai Dudley settled down in a small, isolated area of Connecticut that would come to be known as Dudley Town. From the beginning, things weren't going well. The town sat between three large hills, creating this eerie atmosphere where even at noon, darkness seemed to hang in the air. The land wasn't really that great for farming, and the winters were brutal. The community never really took off, and by 1854, only 26 or so families lived there. But it wasn't just bad luck that plagued Dudley Town. Strange things started happening. Some say that the curse was at least partly responsible for many of the residents' slow descent into madness. Over the years, strange and unexplainable events plagued this town, driving a lot of them to the brink of insanity. It wasn't just the harsh winters or the failing crops that took their toll on the community. It was something darker, something that seemed to lurk in the trees. One of the most famous tales is that of General Herman Swift, a soldier in the Revolutionary War. He lived in Dudley Town with his wife, and the story goes that Swift's wife was struck by lightning while standing right on their porch. General Herman was never the same. He spent the rest of his days lost in grief and paranoia, convinced that this town was cursed, and he wasn't alone. Other residents reportedly experienced terrifying visions, heard strange voices, and felt this overwhelming sense of dread that they couldn't explain. Some people started going missing, only to be found days later wandering through the woods, babbling incoherently. And then there were those who disappeared and were never seen again. And considering how small this settlement was, it definitely makes these stories a lot more unsettling. One story goes that one night, an entire family went missing from their home. Neighbors reported seeing the family's house lit up. They heard noises as if they were still inside talking, but morning came and they never came out. When neighbors finally went to check, the house was completely empty. Another tale goes that a local woodsman went out to chop wood and never returned. No trace of him was ever found. And this was an experienced outdoorsman who knew the area very well. The disappearances were often accompanied by strange occurrences too, like footprints leading nowhere, unexplained sounds in the night, and a general sense of foreboding that seemed to be hanging over the town at all times. Some began to think that there was some malevolent force lurking in the trees. Then there's the last resident of Dudley Town, John Patrick Brophy. After his wife and children went missing, he spent the rest of his life searching for them, but to no avail. And if you think these stories are only old legends, there are more recent disappearances too. In 1945, not really all that new, but still new compared to these older stories, a group of young people hiked into the woods and were never seen again. And in 1975, a woman named Susan Denham vanished while hiking in Dark Entry Forest as well. So what caused people to finally leave Dudley Town? By the late 1800s, the harsh environment, the poor soil, and the general doom and gloom that came with all these rumors of a curse and a demonic entity stalking the forest, it just made living there a pretty bad time. The town's population began to dwindle. Soon there were only about 26 families living there, all of them dealing with their own troubles and tragedies. It's hard to say exactly when and why these families finally left, but they gradually moved away in search of better opportunities. Was it the sense of dread and the strange happenings that just became too much for people to bear? Or was it just not a place where they could thrive anymore? Well, by the late 19th century, Dudley Town was deserted. Buildings fell into disrepair. Nature began reclaiming the land. What was once a small, struggling community had become a ghost town. But what remained, aside from the lonely homes, were the dark rumors and legends, which only grew over time. As the years went on, people started visiting Dudley Town, and many people, the ones lucky enough to make it out of the forest alive anyway, had some strange experiences. Odd animal behavior was a common occurrence. Many visitors noticed that their dogs would react strangely when they approached Dudley Town. Some dogs would outright refuse to enter the woods, visibly scared and uneasy. Others became unusually aggressive and agitated, barking or growling, seemingly at nothing. There are also stories of deer behaving in bizarre ways. Some have seen these animals standing perfectly still for long stretches of time as if frozen in place. Others have claimed that pets that wandered into the dark entry forest sometimes went missing only to return weeks later, appearing extremely stressed or traumatized. Of course, Dudley Town is said to be haunted, with tons of reports of ghostly apparitions and strange sounds coming from the forest. People would describe hearing horrible screams and eerie whispers emanating from the woods in the dead of the night. Some hear heavy footsteps trudging behind them, and of course, when they turn around, there's nothing but trees. Some have also reported hearing the clanging of chains and menacing growls, almost like a wolf's, but this mysterious wolf never shows up, which is definitely for the best, as eerie as it is. One of the most haunting phenomena reported, though, has to be the sound of music coming from the woods, an eerie melody coming from nowhere. The ghost stories of Dudley Town are just as chilling. A former resident of Dudley Town, Gershon Hollister, is said to appear as this shadowy figure, often calling out into the night for help. Hollister had died in 1792 after falling off a barn he'd been building for another resident. There's also a tale of a group of young men who snuck into the forest to explore Dudley Town late one night. They ended up being chased away, but not by an angry local like they'd been expecting. Whoever or whatever this thing was, it had no face, no discernible features of any kind for that matter, just a dark, shadowy form. They finally made it back to their car, only to be terrified when they turned around and saw the shadowy figure right behind them. Suffice to say, they drove away and never came back. There's also a terrifying legend about a strange mist in Dark Entry Forest known as the Devil's Breath. This eerie mist is said to rise up from the forest floor, and some say it's not just fog. The story goes that anyone who breathes it will die instantly. In the early 1800s, Dudley Town was still a mining community, but accidents in the mines were becoming pretty frequent, with a number of miners losing their lives in mysterious ways. And some of the residents started to believe that this mist, the Devil's Breath, as they called it, was to blame. They thought it was a form of divine punishment sent to torment the town for its sins. In 2016, a group of ghost hunters decided to investigate Dudley Town. They set up a camera and a microphone in Dark Entry Forest and let them run overnight. What they captured was a strange mist appearing out of nowhere, moving in a way that didn't seem natural. Even more unsettling, the microphone picked up noises that sounded a lot like whispers and footsteps. And speaking of Dark Entry Forest, there are some spooky stories about it as well. For starters, people will often say they have this oppressive feeling, like the air is being weighed down with sadness and despair, and that this overwhelming feeling hits you from the moment you set foot in the forest. And then there's the silence. A deep, eerie silence that seems to swallow all the sound, leaving only the crunch of footsteps or the rustle of leaves. It's said to be so quiet that the slightest noise feels almost out of place. Some people who visit the forest have experienced lost time. They'll wander in, thinking only a short while has passed, but when they check the time, hours have gone by. In 2019, a group of ghost hunters decided they were going to venture into dark country to find Dudley Town. Well, one of the group members, David, suddenly went missing. Days went by, and fortunately David did show up again, but he had no memory of what had happened. And there are countless other stories of people feeling disoriented and confused, unsure of what happened during these missing hours in the forest. Now, if you are a paranormal enthusiast or you just want to see what all the fuss is about, you'll have to do your digging from a distance. Dudley Town is completely off limits. It's on private land, and the owners have slapped a big "Do not enter" sign on it. And sure, it does kind of make you wonder if there really is something going on out there, but the main reason is locals aren't big fans of the ghost stories. They want to protect the area from people poking around and vandalizing the place, which is obviously understandable. Over the years, a bunch of people have tried to sneak in, hoping to explore this haunted village, but they usually end up with a ticket or worse. But admittedly, the ban on visiting just adds to Dudley Town's mystery. The stories about it being haunted are still there, but with no way to see the place up close for ourselves, the legends have, in a way, become stronger than ever before.
Highway 666, the 6th branch of the famous Route 66. It really doesn't get more never drive at 3 a.m. than this. Today, the highway is known as Highway 191. The name was changed due to the belief that the many accidents, apparitions, and creepy mishaps were caused by the highway having adorned the devil's number for so long. Unfortunately, however, changing the name has not changed the nature of the road, which remains haunted, dangerous, and incredibly creepy to this day. Phantom trucks, ghostly passengers appearing in back seats, see-through hitchhikers in torn white gowns, and hellhounds ready to rip the rubber directly off of your tires are a common sight for those driving along the roadway at night. One woman recounted a drive she had taken along the highway with her husband, saying, "At first everything seemed normal. Her and her husband were the only ones on the road when all of a sudden a massive truck appeared out of nowhere that seemed as though it was headed straight for the pair, charging so fast towards them that sparks were flying from the wheels and flames were coming out of the smokestack. The pair pulled off the road and waited for the truck to pass, and when it did, it disappeared into the night." I'm gonna go ahead and say avoid this roadway at night if you and your tires, which like I said are subject to be ripped apart by literal hellhounds, want to make it to your destination in one piece.
There are plenty of haunted hotspots along Route 66, but one of the most famous is an abandoned truck stop in Villa Ridge, the Tri-County Truck Stop, which opened in 1971 and closed in 2006. Ever since its closing though, people have reported strange stuff going on at the site, and there have been plenty of paranormal investigations in the abandoned building. A team of paranormal investigators called the Paranormal Task Force investigated the site in 2006, and the guy leading the investigation, Greg Myers, said they experienced some pretty weird stuff. Almost as soon as they arrived, a coffee pot came flying off a shelf. It's a nice welcome. He also added, quote, "On the first night we were setting up a camera on the second floor. I was holding a door shut and something was trying to open it from the other side. We were actually fighting back and forth. Other investigators have spotted a man in red flannel in the bathroom vanishing as soon as he's spotted, and other objects like light bulbs being hurled. And people have also apparently seen orbs and spectral shapes floating through the building, some which have been caught on camera."
Dead Man's Curve, located in Claremont County in Ohio. The curve is a turning intersection, a dangerous one where Route 222 meets State Route 125, and it's also said to be the most haunted place in all of Ohio. Although there have been many deaths at the intersection, the majority of hauntings are attributed to 5 young men who were killed there on October 19th of 1969 after their 1968 Impala was hit head-on by a night 1969 Roadrunner, going more than 100 miles an hour. Since then, the curve has been haunted by the deceased young men who appear as faceless hitchhikers hoping to catch a ride from someone who can take them away from the place where they met their grisly end.
Next, we head to Rachel, Nevada with Route 375. This is a pretty notorious stretch of road, known for its supposed extraterrestrial activity. So much so that it's been nicknamed the Extraterrestrial Highway. UFO fanatics from all of the world flock here year after year, hoping to catch an unidentified object in the sky or hopefully find some clue as to what's really going on in Area 51. Driving along this road, you'll get closer to the place than you'd probably ever hope. Now, aside from Area 51 though, there are other interesting spots along the route. There are old atomic bomb sites, lots of other military facilities, and on top of all the alien stuff, there's said to be plenty of paranormal weirdness, vanishing apparitions along the road, phantom headlights, and for everyone with a clown phobia, you may want to make sure you plan your route so that you don't end up having to spend a night at the Clown Motel, which is exactly what it sounds like. A clown-themed motel filled with ceramic clown dolls, puppets, life-size statues, you name it. Definitely where I'd be wanting to spend the night, but maybe not for everybody.
Highway 5, located in Lynn, Alabama. It was what was once a normal highway became a hotbed for paranormal activity after a young woman was killed one night in the late 20th century. A young woman and her boyfriend had been making their way home from prom when the pair got into a vicious fight. Not being able to bear another moment spent arguing with her partner, the woman decided to exit the vehicle, and in a fit of anger, her boyfriend drove off, leaving her all alone in the middle of the night on an empty highway with no shelter, sidewalks, or anyone to help for miles around. She was determined though, and so she began walking along the highway in hopes of making it home by sunrise. Unfortunately, however, she was struck by a truck in a hit and run and left to spend the rest of the night dying a slow, painful death in a ditch next to the road. Her body was discovered the next morning, and her spirit has been there ever since. She's been seen walking along the highway aimlessly in the hopes of one day being able to finally make it back home to her family. Those who see her on the road and stop for help are greeted with a pretty creepy sight of a woman mangled and distressed who disappears when they finally get close enough to speak to her.
Route 2A in Maine is said to be one of the most haunted stretches of road in all of the US. Not only do you have loads of ghost stories, but it really is a pretty dangerous road. Lots of deadly accidents have happened here, especially in the winter, where the conditions are said to be absolutely brutal. Tons of sharp turns and blind corners, so it's a pretty notorious road as is. One of the most famous ghost stories is the Screaming Woman. A number of travelers driving along the road at night will report spotting a woman screaming by the side of the road, desperate for help, saying that her husband is trapped in a car wreck, so she asks to be driven further up the road where the accident is, but somewhere along the journey, the woman disappears. The story goes that one winter night, a newly married couple was driving along the road when they swerved and hit a utility pole. The husband was killed instantly, but the woman was thrown from the vehicle. She limped along the road for a while in search of help, but there were no other vehicles. Eventually, she collapsed and died from the cold.
Zombie Road, the most haunted road in Missouri, located in Willwood, Missouri, just west of St. Louis, if you know it. Today, Zombie Road is not so much a road as it is a series of trails, but at one point it was a road, and that is why it is on this list today. Zombie Road was originally constructed in the 19th century, but it was shut down in 2010 to be repurposed as a bike path. Big mistake. Prior to the road being converted into a trail, Zombie Road is rumored to have been home to a crazed killer who escaped from a nearby asylum during the 1950s. He lived out the rest of his days hiding in shacks around the road and preying on young men and women who were unfortunate enough to have been walking around the area. Eventually he died, but unfortunately, according to legend, that didn't stop his reign of terror, because it is believed that the crazed man went on to continue his killing spree in the afterlife, which is how the road came to be known as Zombie Road. When the road was converted to trails, it seems as though the spirit of the man, along with the spirits of his victims, became quite pissed off because instances of paranormal activity in the area became so bad that city officials were forced to create strict hours of operation for the trail that forbid entry after dark. If you've been, let me know.
A name like Shades of Death Road doesn't really inspire a whole lot of confidence now, does it? At least not in your safety. This road in New Jersey is said to be one of the most haunted places in the entire state. Even before motorized vehicles were a thing, this place had a dark reputation. There were some very violent incidents that took place along here. In the 1920s and 30s, there were some pretty famous incidents. The creepiest, though, is probably the woman who lobbed off her husband's head and then buried both parts of his body on either side of the road. Just off the road is a pretty famous lake too, Ghost Lake, which gets its name for a pretty obvious reason. Spooky stuff happens there. Oh, and there's ghosts. Apparently there's often said to be an eerie fog surrounding the lake, and the sky is perpetually bright, even in the middle of the night, almost like it's always twilight.
What better name is there for a haunted road than Mount Misery? But wait, there's more, because Mount Misery is actually part of a set of two haunted highways, Mount Misery Road and Sweet Hollow Road, that neighbor one another and share in an incredibly ominous and haunted past. According to legend, a woman named Mary killed her husband and their daughters while driving down Mount Misery one night, and then, unable to live with what she had done, she took her own life while driving down Sweet Hollow Road. Many people who have driven down the roads at night have claimed to have seen a police officer flagging them down, as he would have done to Mary after she killed her family. Now, when these people get closer to the officer, they realize that the man is actually missing the back of his head. It's a gruesome sight, and at that point they drive away. Also, others claim that at one time the road was connected to the entrance of an insane asylum, which was burned to the ground one night by an angry patient, and that if you listen closely while driving down the road in the dead of night, you can still hear the dying patient's fiery screams. That sounds like hell.
And finally, we have Highway 299 in California. This one passes by a ghost town, so that, along with other ghostly tales, and it's no surprise why it's said to be one of the most haunted roads in the country. Highway 299 is a long, lonely road running from east to west through the state of California, known for its eerie ghost stories. The most haunted part is said to be between Old Shasta City and Whiskey Town Lake. Old Shasta City was, at one time, a lively gold rush town, but it's now abandoned. All that remains of it now are the ruins of the old bakery, the blacksmith shop, Mason's Lodge, and courthouse. Inside the courthouse, there is an old jail where it's said the spirits of criminals who were tried and hanged still lurk around. And further up the road is Whiskey Town. And Whiskey Town is super interesting because there's an entire town submerged under a lake. When the Whiskey Town Dam was built decades ago, the town flooded and its residents had to leave. But some believe that not everyone left, and the spirits of the people who once lived in the town now haunt the lake. And even if they're not haunting it, just swimming where there's an entire old abandoned town below you, that's weird. Now, before it became the Golden Arches, it was a gas station where a number of pretty dark accidents took place. A mother accidentally ran over her own son, killing him. A mechanic was crushed under a car lift. I'm sure there's more. Gonna guess a deadly robbery or two. Point is, ever since the place got turned into a McDonald's, staff have been pretty spooked. People will hear eerie sounds late at night, other than the typical types of sounds you hear coming out of people at McDonald's late at night. Toilets will flush by themselves, and a strange shadowy figure is sometimes seen in the walk-in fridge. So is this McDonald's haunted by the spirits of the people who were crushed by cars at the former gas station? Certainly seems like a possibility.
Next up, we have a Taco Bell located in Twinsburg, Ohio, that is haunted by not one, not two, not three, but 4 separate ghosts. The first of which is a large burly woodsman. There's also a military man and a young woman in a white dress. The woodsman and the military man have often been seen appearing in back hallways of the restaurant, while the young woman has been seen walking around the kitchen area. In one instance, an employee employee reported having seen a young woman wearing a white gown walk into the walk-in freezer, and she closed the door behind her. When the employee went to check it out, he opened the freezer door to find no woman, but instead food items strewn all across the freezer floor. The fourth ghost who haunts the establishment is a young man dressed in an outdated Taco Bell uniform. Legend has it he died while working at the restaurant and now spends his days helping out the other employees with their daily tasks. So he's not such a bad guy. He's been seen mopping up the floors, washing dishes, and handing out unsolicited advice about how he believes the restaurant should be run. One customer of the Twinsburg Taco Bell even shared a story about how one night they placed an order with an employee, but they forgot to order hot sauce. When they went back up to the counter, another employee asked if he could take their order. They said that their order had already been placed, to which the man behind the counter replied, "With who? I'm the only one here."
Next up, we have the McBarge in Vancouver, Canada. Yes, just like the floating Krusty Burger in The Simpsons, there really is a floating McDonald's out in the middle of False Creek, Vancouver, or at least there used to be. It now sits completely derelict in Maple Ridge, British Columbia. It opened in 1986 as part of Expo 86, a World's Fair that was being held in Vancouver that year. It was a nautical-themed McDonald's, which is fun, but on top of that, the place was pretty cutting-edge and high-end for a McDonald's at the time. Food was delivered via a conveyor belt, there were real houseplants for decoration, the staff were dressed as sailors, and customers seemed to really like it. But it wasn't around for long. After Expo 86, the place was closed, and the barge has passed from owner to owner in the years since, falling further and further into disrepair. And over the years, people have broken into the place to explore and have told some pretty eerie stories about the place. Supposedly, it's haunted, and looking at images of the inside online, you can certainly see why.
Next on our list today, we have a Burger King located in West Palm Beach in Florida. From the outside, it looks pretty normal, but legend has it that a young man died somewhere in or around the restaurant and now roams around the building causing chaos and scaring staff members. The ghost has been affectionately named the Burger Prince and has often been seen by the night janitors and closing staff of the establishment. Once the restaurant closes and all the doors are locked, the young man appears. One janitor who saw the man tried to chase him out of the establishment on 2 separate occasions, but both times this Burger Prince simply vanished into thin air right in front of the workers' eyes. Eventually, the janitor had enough, and he ended up quitting his job at the restaurant, claiming that he was unsettled by the sightings and the haunting energy he felt whenever he entered the establishment. Many other members of the staff have reported seeing the man as well, but it appears as though they are less bothered, probably because most of them aren't stuck with the ghost when they're all alone after dark.
The Subway sandwiches in Dodgeville, Wisconsin is said to be haunted. Now, pretty much every Subway is haunted, in a way, by the lingering presence that is Jared Fogle. That's stained the company's legacy forever at this point, but this particular Subway also has some ghosts to contend with. This location was once a Harley-Davidson motorcycle shop, the owners of which died in a car crash in 1984, on Friday the 13th no less, and to this day customers and staff feel this eerie presence in the restaurant. A presence that many believe is the spirit of the former owner's wife. Staff working alone late at night have claimed to see the ghostly figure of a woman standing behind the cash register. Sometimes names are called out even though no one is there. Items get inexplicably knocked off of shelves, and the door's buzzer will occasionally go off even though, you guessed it, there's no one around.
Did you know that Subway's bread can't be classified as bread because of the sugar content? So, not very healthy. None of these are. Next up, we have the haunted Pizza Hut location in Wooster, Ohio. According to a local historian, the restaurant was built on the site of a former asylum, which wasn't necessarily kind to its patients. Anyone who's been with this channel for even a week probably knows by now, old asylums almost always equal haunted buildings. But it appears that even after the old hospital was torn down and replaced with a red-roofed pizza-making fast food factory, say that 5 times fast, the ghosts are still calling the lot home. Many employees who work at this location have told of seeing ghosts and shadowy figures appearing throughout the building. Not only that, but it's not uncommon for employees and customers to hear the sounds of doors opening and shutting, even though there's no doors around where the noises are coming from. Perhaps it's the ghosts slipping in and out of hospital rooms past. Footsteps have often been heard around the restaurant as well. One manager of the establishment even claimed to have been followed by an eerie mist while closing one night, and other employees have heard music coming from an unknown source and reported feeling themselves being grabbed or touched out of nowhere and when no one else is around. That's pretty scary, if you ask me.
The Arby's in Colorado Springs is said to be haunted by the ghost of a former manager. She'd fired an employee earlier in the day who showed up at the restaurant later that day, armed, and fired at the manager, killing her instantly. Imagine killing your manager for being fired from an Arby's. That's pretty sad. Some really spooky stuff is said to go on at this Arby's. When employees think they're alone, either opening earlier in the morning or closing for the night, they'll sometimes see a woman wandering through the kitchen before disappearing out the back door. Some will also hear ghostly whispers, even their own name being spoken. And closers will often find chairs neatly placed back on the floor after they've put them on top of the tables for the night. I hate stuff with chairs. Chairs moving around, it's creepy.
I love how out of like all the things we talk about, it's chairs.
I don't know, I need chairs in my house for that reason.
This next one is pretty gruesome. While I don't know if this McDonald's location in China is necessarily actually haunted, some pretty haunting and absolutely pure evil stuff did go down within its walls. On August 18th of 2012, 6 members of a Christian splinter cult belonging to the Church of Almighty God entered the establishment and began badgering the patrons of the restaurant, asking for their phone numbers so that the cult may contact them later and provide them with information about the church. Most of the patrons reluctantly gave in, with the hopes of having the cult members leave, but one woman, Wu Shoyan, refused. The cult, believing her to be a demon, tied her to a chair in front of her children, and then in a fit of rage beat her to death. When cult members were questioned by police, they showed no remorse and simply told officials that the woman was an evil spirit and that they did not fear the law as God was on their side. They were arrested and later executed for their crimes, as they should be. It was really gross.
The Papa John's in Seymour, Indiana is said to be haunted by possibly a few different ghosts. One is the spirit of a former police officer who was killed in the plaza. There have been a few policemen who have died in the area, but in the Papa John's, especially on quiet nights, staff have claimed to see the semi-translucent figure of a man in a blue uniform. Many believe it to be the ghost of one of these police officers. One of the creepiest occurrences is the ghostly knocking as well. For a long time, the storefront connected to the Papa John's was completely vacant, but customers and staff would often hear an eerie knocking sound coming from next door.
Finally, to finish off our list today, we have a lesser known fast food restaurant east of Chicago Pizza, located in Shreve, Ohio. A lot of Ohios on this list today. The site in which the fast food pizza restaurant was built was once the site of a funeral home. Before that, a speakeasy, and before that, a depot, a boarding room, and a titanium factory, each with their own tragic history, which caused many deaths to take place on the grounds, which have caused the grounds to become haunted by many ghosts. One ghost, known as Harvey, is known to smoke vanilla cigars in the establishment's walk-in freezer, and sometimes he will even lock the freezer door and turn the lights on and off. Another ghost, Mimi, plays with the clock and messes with any bills that might get left on the counter, sometimes marking them with a red X. Coffee pots flying out of the coffee maker, slamming doors, unexplained voices, and footsteps have also been reported in the restaurant. And employees of the establishment have said that after closing time, they often hear footsteps coming from upstairs, despite the fact that the restaurant has no upstairs. I'm guessing at least one of the other places did though.
The Blue Beacon truck stop in Wilmington, Ohio is known for being more than just a spot to refuel and rest. Truckers and travelers say it's haunted by the ghost of a truck driver who died in a car accident on the nearby highway. Of course, a truck stop in Ohio needs to be haunted. Isn't everything in Ohio haunted or weird? Ohio has a haunted Taco Bell, for God's sakes. Anyway, it's said that late at night when the fog rolls in and the world seems quieter, some drivers have reported feeling this eerie presence. It's like it feels as if someone is watching them, even when they're completely alone. Several truckers have shared stories of seeing a shadowy figure in their mirrors only for it to vanish when they turn around. Some have even claimed to see the ghostly trucker standing by the pumps, staring blankly into the distance. The truck stop staff have also experienced strange occurrences, strange, odd whispers, and the sound of footsteps echoing through the empty lot. One chilling account tells of a driver who heard a knock on his cab door late one night. When he opened it, there was no one there. He just felt a cold breeze brush past him. Others have reported hearing a faint, sorrowful voice on their radios as if the ghostly trucker is still trying to communicate. Adairsville Travel Plaza in Georgia has been closed for about 25 years, but the abandoned building still stands and apparently stuff still goes on there, just has nothing to do with the living. YouTuber and trucker Indiana Jack Trucker posted a video to his channel about the place. He had a buddy of his named Nate go to check it out and get some footage. Now, any abandoned place is gonna have an eerie vibe about it, and that's certainly the case here, but add the stories about truckers parking their rig here late at night to sleep, only to hear phantom knocks on their doors and windows, and it definitely bumps things up a notch. This next story is called Truck Stop Horror. It was posted by a now deleted Reddit user. In 2003, the Redditor met a trucker who said he wanted to take them on exciting adventures. This would be a big chance for the Redditor, who didn't really know anything outside their safe small town life. Little did they know, this was the start of a wild ride. The Redditor, who had never traveled outside their state, got a taste of the trucking life with their new boyfriend. Trucking had its fun moments and they got to see most of the US, but living on the road 24/7 was tough. With no smartphones or streaming services back then, their entertainment was limited to DVDs, books, and talking on the CB radio. But this helped them connect with other truckers, some of whom were really cool, others were a little on the creepy side. They both had CB handles for safety. The ex was Ninja Dwarf, and the Redditor, being young and from Alaska, went by Northern Exposure. Among the truckers they chatted with, there was a guy named Maniac. His voice alone gave them the creeps. It was like something straight out of a horror movie. One day, Maniac asked to tag along with them to Arkansas. He always seemed to be driving the same route, but never actually crossed paths with them. He described his truck, a black Peterbilt with a cattle guard and brow, but they never had actually seen it. Once they agreed to meet in Nevada, but Maniac never showed up. This happened a few times. Things took a dark turn though when they heard about lot lizards, aka truck stop SEX workers, who were being found dead in several states. These were just gruesome stories to the Reddit user at first, until they witnessed a horrifying scene at a truck stop. A woman had been tied to a trailer and ripped apart when the driver unknowingly pulled out. Months after this, they were pulled into a truck stop in New Orleans when they heard a familiar voice crackling over the CB. It was Maniac, and he was close. Not only that, but he was making threats and even hinting at his involvement in the killings. And finally, for the first time, they saw it, a black Peterbilt. It was Maniac's truck, and as he rolled by, he shot them a creepy grin as he spoke into his mic. Be safe out there, Ninja Dwarf and Northern Exposure. A common sight amongst truck drivers driving late at night and early into the morning are shadow figures, sometimes referred to as silent specters. Late at night, when the world is mostly asleep, truckers have reported seeing strange shadowy figures at truck stops. The figures are often seen wandering around the parking lots or restrooms. One story tells of a trucker driving down I-77 near Charlotte, North Carolina. he saw what looked like a homeless man standing by the on-ramp. And as he got closer, he noticed that there was something off. The person had matte black skin and no features at all. He pulled over to take another look, but when he turned around, the figure was gone. Now, these shadow figures are a pretty common tale amongst truckers. Some think they're just tricks of the mind, especially when driving tired late at night, a sign that you probably need to pull over and get some sleep. But others believe they might be ghosts or something else entirely, dark omens or spirits of people who died in horrible accidents, forever trapped on the lonely roads where they died. This terrifying tale comes to us from Reddit user Mr. Tumnus_, who writes, in 2017, on one of my routes, I had stopped at Love's gas station in Emerson, Georgia, maybe 20 minutes outside Atlanta. I'd been stopped for about an hour just resting and eating some fast food when a woman came knocking on my door. I opened it and she looked homeless and pretty old, in her 50s or 60s. I asked her if I could help her and she was like, I think we can help each other. And I said, how so? And she proceeds to proposition me paying for you know what, which I declined and sent her on her way. I continue to rest and eat and play on my phone for another 30 minutes when someone comes to my door and opens it and attempts to rob me in a scream mask. It was obviously the old lady from before. I push her away and lock my door and crank it up. I assumed she ran off somewhere because I could no longer see her. After the truck was ready, I pulled off and started driving. Soon cars next to me started trying to get my attention, honking and pointing to the back end of my truck. I pull over, and when I come to a stop, I see someone jump and start running. It was the same lady. This crazy woman was hanging onto the back of my truck as I was driving. It was just a really odd experience. The Flying J truck stop in Kingman, Arizona is said to be haunted by the spirit of a young boy. This truck stop is said to be haunted by the ghost of a young boy who tragically died in a fire there in the 70s. Late at night, visitors pulling in during a long drive on the road will often have some unsettling experiences. Some truckers have seen the apparition of a young boy playing near the gas pumps, which is already a bit of an eerie sight on an empty road at 3 a.m. in the morning anyway, but it gets even creepier when the figure disappears into thin air. Others have heard the sound of young laughter echoing through the empty lot. The truck stop staff have their own tales, with several reporting the feeling of a small hand brushing against theirs or the faint sound of footsteps running down the aisles. The Pilots Travel Center in Lebanon, Tennessee also has an eerie reputation. This one is said to be haunted by the ghost of a truck driver who was killed there in the late 80s. He's notorious for his pleas for help. Late at night or in the wee hours of the morning when the truck stop is quiet, some people have reported seeing the ghostly figure of a man wandering the parking lot. His apparition often appears near the spot where he was violently beaten to death. Truckers will also say they've heard faint cries for help echoing through the lot, only there's never anyone there but the staff, who say the phantom cries are a common occurrence. And they have other creepy stories of their own, like the sounds of footsteps following close behind them, only to turn around to find that no one's there. One chilling story involves a trucker who was taking a late night shower. He suddenly heard desperate banging on the door and a man's voice pleading for help. When he opened the door, lo and behold, the hallway was empty. Next, we head to Texas with Love's Truck Stop in Shamrock. For years, truckers have shared stories about the odd things they've experienced at the place, which is said to be haunted by the ghost of a young woman who was killed there 30-odd years ago. It seems like she may not have left either. The staff have felt a cold, unseen hand brush against them, sending chills down their spines. Some have heard soft cries or whispers coming from empty rooms. This next account comes from a deleted Reddit user who posted about a story her boyfriend told her. It goes as follows. My boyfriend is a truck driver who routinely does midnight runs. He told me that one night he was getting ready to park in a lot next to a truck stop. He said it looked like there were no lights, no cars, no sign of anyone, but he said screw it. He was tired. He woke up the next morning, parked on the side of the road with 3 highway patrol vehicles behind him. He was about 15 miles away from the truck stop he parked at. Thing is, he was sleeping in his camper the whole night. He has no idea how he got on the side of the road, and logic says someone tried stealing the truck and succeeded, and the police convinced him of this happening as they saw a man in a black jumpsuit running away from his truck into a nearby field. Even then, he still feels uneasy about the whole situation. Apparently, the doors were still locked from the inside, and there was no real sign of anyone having tried to break in. The Tri-County truck stop off Route 66 in Villa Ridge, Missouri. This is another truck stop that's now closed, but just because it's abandoned doesn't necessarily mean it's empty. The building has been notorious for its paranormal activity. Many believe it's inhabited by ghosts. Paranormal investigators from the Sci-Fi Channel visited the site and declared it haunted. Some pretty freaky stuff happened during their investigation. They spotted an apparition in the bathroom wearing a red flannel shirt. He disappeared almost as soon as he was spotted. One team member watched as a door swung open on its own after they had shut it. Investigators from Missouri's Paranormal Task Force investigated the place in 2006 and had a light bulb hurled at them, along with a coffee pot. Locals have their own stories. You'll have the typical shadowy figures flitting past the windows, and others have spotted that man in the red flannel shirt, who's said to be a former trucker who died at the stop. Emily's Bridge in Stowe, Vermont is a pretty picturesque bridge to get some nice fall season photos on, but it also has a reputation that's perfect for the Halloween season. So if you're looking for a spooky fall outing, this is a good option. Best part is, it's free. Built in the mid-1800s, it's named after a young woman who's said to have suffered a tragic fate on her wedding day. The story goes that Emily was left at the altar, and in her heartbreak, took her own life on the bridge. Ever since, strange things have been said to happen on and around it. Some claim to see the figure of a young woman in a wedding dress wandering nearby, only there's no wedding happening and it's 2 a.m. in the morning. Others will hear soft sobbing or footsteps when no one else is around. If you're looking for a blend of scenic beauty and a possible ghost encounter this Halloween, Emily's Bridge is worth checking out. Well, you don't hear about haunted zoos very often, but here we are. Yes, the Lincoln Park Zoo is rumored to be one of the most haunted spots in Chicago. Before it became a popular spot for families and animal lovers, this area was home to the Chicago City Cemetery. The cemetery was around from 1843 to 1859. It held the remains of over 35,000 people, and legend has it that as many as 12,000 bodies are still under the zoo till this day. So that kind of explains the whole haunted zoo thing. Many people have experienced eerie things here. One of the most common sightings is of a ghostly figure dressed in Victoria-era clothing. The apparition seems to appear out of nowhere, wandering through the park, right through animal enclosures, and then disappearing. Also a high probability that at least one of those sightings was just a very living person sneaking into an animal enclosure, getting eaten by a gator or something. Just one possibility. One specific ghostly woman has been frequently spotted near the Lion House, moving about as if she doesn't notice the visitors around her. She's also been seen in ladies' restrooms nearby, where her reflection has been reported in the mirror, only to disappear when someone turns to look. People have also reported flickering lights and doors slamming shut on their own. So I didn't think I'd have a zoo on a Halloween destination trip through America, but again, here we are, something different. The Queen Mary, now permanently docked in Long Beach, California, is one of America's most famous haunted locations. In 1934, this grand ocean liner operated as a luxury cruise ship, and it was used during World War II. There are tons of stories about the strange occurrences on board. Many will say they hear unexplained noises and cold spots, but one of the most famous spirits is said to be a young girl named Jackie, who reportedly enjoys playing in the ship's pool area. Guests have claimed to hear her laughter and even catch glimpses of her apparition. Another well-known ghost is that of a crew member who died in an accident in the engine room. People have reported hearing footsteps, voices, and machinery sounds when no one else is around. So, if you want to see the place for yourself, there are guided tours that take visitors through its most haunted areas. Next up, we have Savannah, Georgia. Yes, I'm talking about the entire town. Savannah is often referred to as one of the most haunted cities in America, along with New Orleans and Salem. and it's easy to see why. The city's history is full of dark stuff. Battles, deadly diseases, disasters. You have the siege of Savannah in 1779. Then the city was captured by General Sherman during the Civil War. The spirits of soldiers who died in these battles are said to be trapped in places like the Laurel Grove Cemetery. Some will even claim to see them roaming the streets. But it's not just soldiers that haunt Savannah. The city was devastated by a series of yellow fever epidemics in the early 1800s. In 1820 alone, the disease wiped out about a tenth of the population. That's a lot of people. There was also a deadly fire in 1820, which started in a stable and quickly spread, destroying hundreds of buildings. 1820 was just a bad year for them. But this wasn't the first time a horrible fire ravaged the city. There was a pretty devastating one in 1796 as well. The city is home to over 40 ghost tours that go deeper into all that stuff. Anyway, lots to see and do in Savannah around this time of year. The Adams Grove Presbyterian Church in Alabama. This historic Greek Revival style church was built in 1853. Now it doesn't operate as a church anymore, and from what I've heard, it's on private property, so you may not actually be able to set foot in it yourself, but creepy stuff is said to go on around it. One of the supposed entities is the ghost of a former pastor, said to stand in front of the church at night with his arms raised in prayer right before big storms hit, vanishing as soon as they arrive. Many claim to see other ghostly figures wandering around the church and nearby cemetery, which is considered one of the most haunted in Alabama. Another entity people will claim to see is a shadowy figure with dark red eyes. Others report hearing the sound of crying emanating from inside the empty church. And there are also stories of ghostly organ music being heard. The Sheffield Island Lighthouse is an old Victorian-style lighthouse built in 1868. It's a short ferry ride from South Norwalk, Connecticut. Really pretty sight to check out if you're just into the history, but if you want that added Halloween vibe, even better. The story goes that the lighthouse's original keeper died mysteriously while watching passing ships through a spyglass. His sudden death is still unexplained to this day, and many believe his spirit still lingers in the building. In 1991, an archaeologist working on the island reported some strange stuff going on. He claimed to hear music coming from the shores, distant cries for help, and the sound of a foghorn, even though there was no foghorn on the island at all. Many people believe these sounds could be attributed to the ghost of Captain Robert Sheffield, the island's original owner in the early 1800s, who had a love of unusual musical instruments. The Red Onion Saloon in Skagway, Alaska was built in 1898 during the Klondike Gold Rush. Originally it was a brothel for miners, and it was a very strange brothel. It used dolls to represent each woman working upstairs, and each day 10 dolls would be placed on the bar. Customers would then choose one to indicate which lady was occupied. When the customer returned, the doll would go back to its sitting position on the bar, signaling that the worker was once again available. The Red Onion is of course not a brothel anymore, but it still operates as a bar and a restaurant. What also remains though are those dolls, and possibly some of the workers and guests from back in the brothel days. One of the most famous spirits is named Lydia, a former madame who a number of staff have reported encountering. Apparently you can smell this lingering perfume scent in the room she used to work in, and if you're lucky enough or unlucky enough, you may even catch a glimpse of her. But Lydia is generally pretty friendly, especially towards women. She's known to water plants, caress people's faces, and leave behind also the smell of freshly cut lilacs. Guests have also snapped photos of orbs, white blurs, and even the faint outline of her face. But not all the spirits here are friendly. There's another ghost known as John. He leaves behind a scent as well, just not as nice as perfume or flowers. It's just his horrible BO. He's also known to shove people down the stairs and fling open doors while staff are busy. The Driscoll Hotel in Austin, Texas is quite the building, just elegant. It was built in 1886, and people from all over the world come here for all sorts of reasons. Tourists, obviously, weddings are hosted here, and folks interested in the paranormal. One of the most famous spirits said to haunt the Driscoll is its founder, Jesse Driscoll. Shortly after the hotel opened, Jesse ran into some financial problem. He ended up losing ownership of the hotel in a poker game just after its grand opening. But his spirit has never left. Guests have seen him throughout the hotel, but especially in a room overlooking 6th Street and Brazos. One story tells of a man who woke up in the night to find a man standing by the window smoking a cigar. When he turned on the light, the figure just vanished, but the curtains were still swaying and cigar smoke was still in the air. There's also a painting on the 5th floor of a young girl with flowers and a letter, and it's said when you pass by the painting you may feel a deeply unsettling presence. The Crescent Hotel in Eureka Springs, Arkansas is often referred to as America's most haunted hotel. Built in 1886, it served various purposes over the years. Started out as a hotel, it was also a college, a hospital. Many believe that the spirits of those who died here are still present. One of the most famous ghosts is a young woman named Theodora, who's often seen in a flowing white dress. Visitors have described her as a friendly spirit who appears to be watching over the hotel. It's also said to be the ghost of a former doctor who worked at the hotel when it was a hospital. Staff members have reported feeling his presence in the basement where he may have performed treatments on patients. This hotel also showed up in an episode of Ghost Hunters where the team claimed to capture a full body apparition. So why not stay for yourself? You can also hit up a ghost tour. Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia is a former prison that is now known as one of the most haunted locations in the States. It opened in 1829, being the first prison to implement solitary confinement. It closed in 1971, but since then, it's become a popular site for ghost hunters. You have tons of spirits here, former guards and inmates who died violently or lost their minds in solitary. During the Halloween season, though, the building transforms into a haunted attraction called Halloween Nights at Eastern State Penitentiary. You have a number of different haunts to walk through and different Halloween-themed activities. Looks like a pretty good time to me. I mean, a Halloween attraction inside a haunted prison, that makes for some pretty spooky atmosphere.
So starting us off in at number 10, we have Villisca Axe Murderer House of Villisca, Iowa, easily the most notable murders out of Iowa. This story has haunted the town of Villisca since 1912. On June 10th of that year, the new house got a new nickname, the Axe Murder House, after a gruesome murder took place. Josiah B. Moore and his wife, along with their 4 young children and 2 guests of the family, were bludgeoned to death with, you guys guessed it, an axe. Well, what's more, they never identified who did it to them. The authorities investigated for 10 years and had famous grand jury trials over what would be called today as, well, famously said by Donald Trump, is fake news. Slander lawsuits took place and many political careers were broken because of it all.
Information that was false and fake and never happened got released to the public.
As the story goes, the family had a normal day leading up to the evening with their kids at a Sunday school program and their 2 neighbors joining and spending the night. The axe used was already on the Moore property and is the ominous weapon used against the 8 victims. But the strangest thing about this eerie tale is that the axe was found next to a pond of bacon and all of the windows and mirrors were covered up with clothes and piece of wood from furniture. There was blood everywhere, and there was a plate of uneaten food. Is this real life right now? I have no idea what is going on. The mysterious killer must have had to go on to the next family, because from 1911 to 1912 there was a slew of other eerily similar axe murderers in Iowa. There is said to be as many as 24 similar murders cases that were never solved. Number 9, the Winchester Mystery House, San Jose, California. This is the story of Sarah Lockwood Winchester and the mystery behind her choice to do construction on the house every single day from when she moved in. Her late husband, William Wirt Winchester, is the man responsible for the Winchester rifle, a historically famous gun that is said to have, won the West. Well, they had a baby girl who died 6 weeks after birth, and her husband passed away shortly after that from tuberculosis. Legends have it that Sarah had spoken to a fortune teller of sorts who told her to leave her home in Connecticut and move west. She chose San Jose, but it gets even more strange. This medium had told her that the bad fortune that her family had was because of the men that were killed at the hands of the famous Winchester rifle, and that she needed to build a house big enough for all of them if she wanted to remain alive. Well, this house is a whopping 24,000 square feet. I can't imagine how many bathrooms are in that place. The house was under 24/7, 365 construction for 38 years. Absolutely insane. She really wanted to take the advice seriously. You can just imagine how insane that would be. Just to give you guys a hint, there are 10,000 windows 47 stairways, and 6 kitchens, because why not? You never know what room you're in where you're gonna get hungry. Alright, moving right along on this list, at number 8 we have the Sultan's Palace, New Orleans, the house at 1716 Dauphine Street, which is a classic French Quarter palace. In 1836, it was said to be leased by the Turkish Sultan when the owner was in a bind, but they needed money but they didn't want to sell it. For months, parties took place that were said to have uniformed men and beautiful women in. Well, concern from the neighbors came when it obviously turned it into an opium den and could hear screams over the loud music that was constantly playing. No one knew what truly went on in that house unless they went in themselves. But the great mystery of the house was the Sultan's demise. One morning, a passerby noticed that there was blood dripping from the windows and front steps of the palace. Police arrived on the scene only to find men and women and children scattered around the property, dismembered. Their body parts was virtually everywhere. Is this real life right now? They found one man buried in the courtyard who initially assumed to be the Sultan, but it was in fact his brother. Coming in hot at number 7 of this list, we have a Moundsville Penitentiary, West Virginia. Well, you might recognize this old prison if you were to see it. MTV's Fear Show made it famous again. The decommissioned prison had thought to be haunted before it was shut down and reopened again for tours. Aside from MTV, there have been a ton of ghost hunters, documentary filmmakers. I mean, why not? This place is creepy, it's haunted. I mean, probably Sam and Dean Winchester, they're probably gonna go there as well. Ed and Lorraine Warren, they probably had to holy water a lot of beings, a lot of creatures and demons. Well, this prison holds up to 2,000 prisoners. They executed almost 100 prisoners who is said to have haunted the prison to this day, and nearly 1,000 dead in total. The building was decommissioned in 1995 and now only exists for public tours. Fun fact, actually, Charles Manson once petitioned to be transferred to this location. I'm not sure why. I mean, this guy's crazy.
You don't understand me. That's your trouble.
Number 6, we're bringing you St. Augustine Lighthouse, St. Augustine in Florida. Well, some say this is the most haunted lighthouse in America. It's also the oldest. It might be one of the most haunted ones in the world. Many people lost their lives in or around the lighthouse, and it is believed that their spirits never left the ground. One of the most famous ghost stories from this, pretty airy place is the 2 petite sisters that can be heard giggling at night. Now, if I'm sleeping in bed and I'm hearing people laughing, I don't think that's too funny. I would be horrified. Their father worked at a lighthouse, and through an unforeseen accident, the 2 sisters and their friend had fallen off the cliff and drowned. This may not have been no accident. Another tale of the lighthouse keeper's ghost is said to have spent the last 100 years around the property after falling to his sudden death. Some even say he doesn't even know he's dead, and he's just been seen walking around smoking a cigar. Number 5, we've got the Myrtles Plantation in St. Francisville, Louisiana, built on top of an Indian burial ground back in 1796. I'm not sure why people are building things on like cemeteries. You hear about like all these churches being built on cemeteries, or you're just building things on dead people. Why? Well, this sprawling plantation is said to be haunted by at least 12 different ghosts. It is now being turned into a bed and breakfast. Definitely not a place I want to get up in the morning. I'm not having my coffee on top of a dead person. But let me tell you guys a little bit about Chloe. Well, Chloe is said to be the most vengeful of the ghosts that occupied this property. Well, she was hung from a tree after poisoning her slave's master's wife and 2 children with cake. Chloe sought revenge after her death, and we've even found pictures that have been taken present time with a vision of a little girl in a green dress and a head turban on the property and in the windows as people tour and take pictures of their time there. Another ghost still calls this plantation home. A man was shot by the owner of the house after the Chloe era. I mean, there's a lot of history going on in that place. Our number 4, we have a Bell Witch Cave, Adams, Tennessee. This 320-acre home was purchased by the Bell family back in 1804. John Bell was a farmer, and he moved there with his wife and children. But 13 years after they had settled, they started to notice paranormal activity. The legend says that the family started to notice animals roaming the property and sounds of chains being dragged through the house. Over the years, Bell had reported to others that the presence began speaking to him and said her name was Kate, the Bell's witch. This Kate character tormented the family, but specifically John's daughter Betsy, scratching her, pulling her hair, and pinching her. It is believed that she was trying to stop Betsy's engagement, and when Betsy finally broke down, Kate said that she would leave her alone and return in 7 years. And again in 104 years. I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be around, so you can do whatever you want to me. Some people think Kate never left because the entire town continued to experience her wrath. Finally, in at number 3, we have one of the most haunted places in America. We have Drummond, Arizona. It is said to be an entire haunted town. So we're not talking about like a building or a cemetery. We're talking about the whole damn place here. It is specifically known for the Drummond Hotel, which was formerly built and used as a hospital and an insane asylum, because why not? A hospital that has over 9,000 deaths. Originally built in 1927, the hospital had a short lifespan, and it sat vacant for nearly 4 decades before it was turned into the Drummond Grand Hotel in 1996. The haunting started right away and were said to be the ghosts of the tortured asylum patients. Keep an eye or an arrow for Claude Harvey, who was a maintenance man on the property in 1935. His body was found pinned underneath an elevator. Even though the elevator had not crushed him, it appeared though he was murdered and his body was just dumped there. Or maybe he was just left there, he wasn't crushed, and maybe he just died from starvation. Or maybe he saw a spider and freaked out under there. Well, there is at least 5 other ghost sightings that include women and children, and several freak accidents that have happened at this property, including a man confined to a wheelchair falling to his death from a balcony, and in the same haunted room, a man killed himself. And also, make sure you guys don't ask about room 32. Number 2 on this list, we have Steppe Cemetery, Benton, Louisiana. So it's kind of obvious that cemeteries are creepy and should be avoided, well, unless you need to pay your respects. But one little spot in Louisiana, well, it's said to be the former home of a cult that sacrificed animals and had orgies. I mean, I'm not making this stuff up. Our research did not determine if it was in that order. There's many stories about this, specifically in volume 5 of an old Indiana folklore book. But one that stands out is of a baby who passed away, and the mother was so distraught, she dug up a burial site for the infant, and she could still be roaming around the area today, weeping and dressed in black near her daughter's grave. You might think all cemeteries look the same, but when you get to this one, you'll definitely notice that most of the gravestones are cracked or broken, which is a bad omen in itself. Number 1 on this list, we have Moon River Brewery, Savannah, Georgia, the American Institute of Paranormal Psychology, which is obviously why we put this in the number 1 spot. New owners of the brewery noticed that something was up when they purchased it in the 90s, although it's been uninhabited for decades. Well, we all remember that our first beer and drunken shenanigans can get out of hand, but not bottles flying out of thin air and smashing against the wall kind of sort of hand, you know? So imagine just getting drunk and all of a sudden a beer just goes flying out of nowhere and you're the only one in that room. Well, the building back then served as a hospital and hundreds of people died with yellow fever. Well, these ghosts take up every edge of the brewery with special attention on the 2nd floor, or of course the basement. One woman was pushed down the stairs while the other had a frightening experience in the woman's bathroom. I wonder if the ghosts are getting drunk there. I'm not even sure if ghosts can get drunk. Imagine being a ghost, you're getting drunk and you're messing with people. Well, starting off at number 10, the Shanghai tunnels in Portland, Oregon. Portland was one of the most dangerous ports in the United States during the early 19th century, and it was the epicenter of Shanghai, a form of human trafficking. It's crazy to think human trafficking still happens today and tunnels are still the way to do it. According to the local lore, swindlers preyed upon unsuspected men in the local salons, which were often outfitted with trap doors that deposited the victims directly into a network of underground tunnels. These men were supposedly held captive, drugged, and eventually transported to the waterfront, where they were sold to ships as unpaid laborers, aka slaves. Some worked for several years before finding their way back home. The tunnels are said to be haunted by the aggrieved spirits of the captives who died in the dark recesses behind the city. Random fact, the practice of kidnapping men to work on ships came to be known as Shanghai because the ships that were sold to were often headed to East Asia. Number 9, Eastern State Penitentiary, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The castle-like Eastern State Penitentiary took solitary confinement to whole new levels when it was built in 1829. Prisoners lived alone, exercised alone, and ate alone. When inmates were left in a cell, a guard would cover his head with a hood so he wouldn't be seen. The prison had to abandon its solitary confinement system due to overcrowding from 1913 until it was closed in 1970. Although the forms of punishment did not get any less severe, chaining an inmate's tongue to his wrists, that's just one example, a true story. The site's one of most haunted places in America right now. Well, it welcomes thousands of visitors every year, both for its museums and annual Terror Behind the Wall celebration, which features 6 haunted attractions within the prison walls for Halloween. When you talk about an attraction inside of a prison, no thanks. Well, it was reported paranormal happenings have included dismembered laughter, shadowy figures, and pacing of footsteps. Sorry, I thought I was hearing footsteps behind me right now. Okay, I'm pretty freaked out with this one, so let's move on to the next one. So next up, number 8, we have House of the Seven Gables, Salem, Massachusetts. Now, this house did not steal its name from the classic novel. In fact, it inspired the novel itself. Salem is known for its history of the famous witch trials, and that's where Sabrina Spellman lived, but it happens to be the birthplace of Nathaniel Hawthorne, who used this 17th century house as inspiration for his famous 1851 novel, The House of the Seven Gables. Aside from its beautiful yet spooky facade, the house is surrounded by paranormal activity and ghost sightings, all based on personal experiences of staff. Every October, the house offers spooky tours as well as weekly performances of 2 plays. The Legacy of the Hanging Judge and Spirit of the Gables. Would you guys see a play in a haunted town's haunted house? Coming in hot at number 7 on this list, the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park. If you've read or seen The Shining, you know the feeling of this often snowbound hotel. It's the location Stephen King based his Overlook Hotel upon. It may not look like the film unless you watch the 1990s made-for-TV movie version, which, I don't think anyone has. Just walking to your room can drain you. So one stiff drink might have you seeing ghosts, or a couple kids chanting, "Red rum, red rum." Number 6, we're bringing you Red Onion Saloon, Skagway, Alaska. Established in 1898 as a brothel for miners during the Klondike Gold Rush, Alaska's Red Onion Saloon, it had a feature that set it apart from other bordellos. It used dolls to help run its business, always a good sign, right? Well, every day 10 dolls would be placed on the bar downstairs, each one representing one of the ladies working in the upstairs room. A customer would choose one of the dolls, at which point it would lay down on the bar to indicate that particular workers were occupied. When the customers came back downstairs, the doll would be returned to her sitting position to let other potential clients know that she was available. Well, fast forward to 2019, when the Red Onion Saloon still operates as a bar and restaurant, yet the dolls are still on display, and it offers tours of the upstairs rooms, which are preserved as sort of like a mixed-shaped brothel museum. As if these dolls weren't creepy enough, there were reports of Lydia, a former madame of a brothel, haunting the site, complete with cold spots and lingering spells of perfume rafting through the walls. All creepiness aside, I'm more curious about how this place got named Red Onion. They could have came up with any other name. Well, let me know what you guys would call this in the comment section below. Give me a name. Alright, we're halfway on this list. Number 5, we got RMS Queen Mary in Long Beach, California. This retired ocean liner sailed the Atlantic Ocean from 1936 to 1967. During the first 3 years at sea, the Queen Mary carried Hollywood celebrities like Elizabeth Taylor. Her days as a luxurious ship were short-lived. In 1939, she was stripped of her amenities and began her second life as a Grey Ghost, a World War II troop ship. At the conclusion of the war, she was restored to her former glory and traversed the Atlantic for nearly 2 more decades. On Halloween 1967, the Queen Mary departed on her last cruise, eventually docking in Long Beach, California, her final resting place. The ship is reportedly haunted by the spirits of those who died aboard, such as the young sailor who was crushed to death by a door in the engine room and a crew member who was murdered in cabin B340. Number 4, Lizzie Borden Bed and Breakfast in Fall River. So this location came up on nearly every search on our quest to find this top 10 list for you guys. Well, you've likely heard of the children's children's rhyme, Lizzie Borden took an axe, gave it to her mother 40 whacks. When she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41. Well, you can not only visit the scene of that famous 1892 double homicide, you can also sleep at the Borden's home, eat their last meal, Johnny cakes of thick cornmeal pancakes and eggs, in case you were wondering, and spend the last nights in the bedroom where the bodies of Lizzie's stepmother Abigail was found. Someone who stayed there said, "I can attest, this home painstakingly furnished to look exactly as it did on the morning of the murders. Well, that will creep you right out." Better though, the 175-year-old property hosts up to 20 overnight guests, in which some of them, for some reason, it's a tradition when you go to this place, they will actually whip out a Ouija board. I mean, I'm not down for Ouija, that is a real life situation that can happen, and let alone whipping out a Ouija board in a haunted place. Finally, down to number 3 on this list, we have Crescent Hotel, Erica Springs, Arkansas. Since its construction in 1886, the Crescent Hotel has served several purposes: luxury resorts, conservatory for young women, junior college, but the strangest mark on its history came in 1937 when it got a new owner, Norman G. Baker. Baker was a millionaire inventor who decided to pose as a doctor despite having no medical training, and turned the hotel into a hospital that can cure cancer. Well, he was eventually found out and he was ran out of town, although reports say that his spirits found its way back to the site and found some otherworldly company too. The now operating Crescent Hotel is said to be haunted by at least 8 ghosts, ranging from a 5-year-old girl to a bearded man wearing Victorian clothing. 1 ghost is enough for me, never mind 8 of them, and children ghosts, I think those were the absolute scariest kind. Number 2 on this list, Heaven's Gate mass suicide site in Rancho Santa Fe. I mean, when you have the word suicide site, yeah, no thanks, not for this brown guy. The golf course strewn San Diego suburb of Rancho Santa Fe regularly makes the most expensive zip codes in the USA. So it came a stunner in 1997 when the world learned it was the home to Heaven's Gate, a cult whose 39 members drank poisoned Kool-Aid as the Hale-Bopp comet passed Earth, believing that aliens behind the comet would rupture their souls to heaven. Yeah, really weird. I'm not making this stuff up. Their bodies were found dressing in black sweatshirts and sweatpants, Nike sneakers, faces covered with purple cloth, and carrying $5.75 in one pocket. A toll of people speculated to catch a ride on the comet. And number 1, we have Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, Western West Virginia. This foreboding asylum began construction in 1858 and opened to patients in 1864. The massive structure was designed by architect Richard Andrews to maximize sunlight and fresh air. It was believed that the building itself would serve as a healing environment. It was designed for 250 people housed and 2,400 patients in crowded conditions. I mean, that's a pretty big range, going from 250 to 2,400. Patients were physically restrained and often given inhumane treatments such as the electroshock therapy and lobotomies, which was very popular back in the day. After more than a century in operation, the facility was forced to close in 1994, which, when you think about it, wasn't too long ago, within the last 30 years. And it was due to the reforms in mental health and treatment and the deterioration of the building. Hundreds of patients died during the asylum tenure, and scores of guests and ghost hunters have claimed they're seeing shadowy figures roaming around the facility.